The mission of FSU Coach is to prepare and equip the next generation of coaches and sports professionals with best practices and current research to enable them to pursue excellence. We have two academic programs, the online graduate certificate, which is 4 classes, and also a 10-class master's in athletic coaching. Our graduate certificate and master's program can be started at any time, either the summer, fall, or spring.
The types of classes that we offer focus on the athlete as a whole person. We focus on the theory and practice, the research, the helping skills. I came to FSU Coach because I truly believed in the mission and the purpose of the program.
I think I have my dream job being a head coach at Florida State, but I know there's always more ways that I can help my athletes and better prepare as a coach. If you're interested in going into coaching or joining the FSU Coach program, I would just say don't even think about it and do it.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to FSU Coach Live. My name is Tim Backhurst, and I'm joined today by Kevin Sutton. Kevin is somebody who I've gotten to know over the last couple of years, and I really wanted him on my show because he has a wealth of experience, not only coaching in high school, but also coaching internationally. So, Kevin, welcome to the show. If you wouldn't mind, just give us a little bit of a background about coaching and your journey.
First and foremost, Tim, thanks for having me on the show. We had the opportunity through a mutual friend to get to know each other, and it's been a great pleasure. I've admired your work from afar, and now I'm admiring your work up close. So thanks again for having me on the show. Tim, my coaching journey started some 40-odd years ago, but I was really blessed because I got into coaching right after I graduated from James Madison University. And I served as a student assistant there for 2 years. And then I went on to the high school level. Actually went back to the high school level where I graduated and worked 10 years with Stu Vetter, who's a Hall of Fame coach in the Washington, D.C. area. And I got bit by the bug and been in coaching ever since. And coaching has taken me through the high school ranks, the highest end of high school, where the teams have been nationally ranked and won national championships. Built my own programs at Montrose Christian, Bishop McNamara, Montverde Academy in Orlando, Florida, and now most recently here at St. Stephen's Academy. And then I've had a wonderful 16-year career at the collegiate space. Like I said, starting at James Madison, worked at Old Dominion University, worked at George Washington University, Georgetown, Pittsburgh, Rhode Island, Florida Gulf Coast, and Kansas State. So I've been really fortunate in my career and been able to be involved with some great universities. And then I've also been involved with USA Basketball on 3 different occasions and coached internationally as well. So very, very fortunate in my coaching career, Tim, that I've had the career that I've had.
It sounds to me like you've moved a few times. I just wonder what the experiences were doing that, because as coaches, maybe we wish we were in a program for 20, 30, 40 years, staying in the same location. But the life of a coach is often that of a somebody who journeys to many places due
Yeah.
to hiring and firings.
Absolutely. I wouldn't trade my journey for anything because I really believe that every move that I've made has been ordered by my faith in the Lord, and I followed His direction. But yes, I've moved often in my coaching career because I think you and I both know, and all the coaches know, when you're on a journey and pursuing your goal to become a head coach, it often takes you in a lot of different directions. This is not always a straight path, to your goal. Sometimes it takes detours, and sometimes it takes you a lot of different places. But each stop on my journey has prepared me for the next stop. So from a professional standpoint, it's been fantastic. And we've lived in some great areas. Pittsburgh, we lived in Rhode Island during the pandemic, which was a great state to live in. We went far west as Kansas and got to live in Manhattan, Kansas for a year and be a part of Kansas State, Kansas rivalry. We lived in Florida a couple times, me at Montverde Academy and then at Florida Gulf Coast. And so we now being back in Florida, we've known that this is where we wanted to put our flag in the ground, if you will, and call this home. But I would not change my path in the places that I've been, because they've also helped make me a better coach, and I've learned a great deal at those universities. From a personal standpoint, I'm not sure my wife likes packing up and having me go to a job and then her, pack up our house and having to move. And most recently, our youngest daughter, who's a freshman at St. Stephen's, she started middle school 2 years ago, and we made her a promise that she would start St. Stephen's as a middle schooler, and then she would graduate from there. So we're really happy where we are.
One of the areas of research that I've been looking at is stress and burnout in coaching.
Mhm.
But one of the areas that hasn't really been researched is stress and burnout in the spouse. And I can see from my own personal experiences of moving and new jobs, et cetera, that puts a lot of strain on families. Can you talk a little bit maybe about how you navigate that of, hey, honey, we're moving again?
Tim, yeah, that's a great question. I often say that the quality of a person's question determines the quality of my answer. So that's a great question. First and foremost, my wife, Beth Sutton, is a fantastic person, first and foremost. But she's an educator herself. And I'm a pretty accomplished coach, but she's a way better, educator and a way better teacher in her field. And she's won Teacher of the Year several times. So we look at each move as an opportunity to continue to grow and as people, and to grow educationally, and then we use as opportunities for our families to continue to grow and to navigate different areas. And so whenever we move, she researches really quickly, and she has planned where we're going to live and which part of the city we're going to live in, and what are the educational experiences that we can have and we can share with our children. So she's fantastic in that regard. And I've been really fortunate because each time that I've moved, I've been able to take my family with me. And I think you and I both know that that's becoming harder and harder to do in this coaching profession, is to take your family with you each time that you move. But fortunately for us, her being an accomplished teacher, people want her for who she is, and it just makes the transition that much easier. She's never been without a job, and has always been selective as to which jobs that she wanted to take. So, it's always our transition, other than the fact that where we're moving to and how to pack up the house and unpack the house, and knowing that we only might be there for 2 years versus 4 or 5. Other than those type of situations that we have to work through, our experiences each place that we've stopped at, each city that we've worked in, has been tremendous.
You've coached in high school, you've coached in college, and many of the people I talk to in coaching, especially when they're younger, have aspirations to be a college coach. And I lose count of the number of emails I get. I want to do your master's because I want to be a collegiate coach. I want to coach in D1, et cetera, et cetera. But you've done that,
Mhm.
and yet here you are coaching at high school,
Mhm.
which is interesting because one would say that Division I is more glamorous, more status, more influence, yet you're not doing that, and you could do that. So I'm curious, why coach at high school? Probably, I'm guessing here, probably for less pay than in college for most places.
Mhm.
Why do that instead of coach at the collegiate level?
Because Tim, I like I said, I've known my whole entire life that I wanted to be a coach. My father was my very first coach, and then I had great coaches as I grew up, and my life has been impacted by them. And I quickly realized that this is the job. If I'm going to have a career, this is the career that I want to have. And so yes, I've been chasing the dream all my life. Once I stopped playing basketball, to become a Division I head basketball coach. And then I would say right after Pittsburgh, when we were unsuccessful and our staff got let go, I quickly came to the realization that I no longer was seeking the role of becoming a head coach at the Division I level. I was longing for the opportunity to be placed in a position where I can have the most impact on people's lives. So I had a career change, a directional change. I became more emotionally intelligent. And I love the opportunities that I was afforded to go to the different places I've done and impact the lives that I've been, the student athletes I've been involved with and the universities I've been involved with. But I do know for 100% certainty that at the high school level that's my niche. I'm so happy to be at St. Stephen's. I can't tell you. And I quickly also realized too, Tim, when we were at Florida Gulf Coast, when I say we, my family, when we were at Florida Gulf Coast, I was there for 1 year. And one of your assistant coaches at now currently at Florida State, Michael Fly, was the head coach. And that was a quote unquote, a low Division I school. But we had so much fun as a staff and so much fun as a team, and we were wildly successful that we still stay in contact now. I came to the realization riding a bus from Central Arkansas up to Tennessee to play David Lipscomb, and it was 11 o'clock at night, that it wasn't no longer about levels for me. It was where I could have the most impact and enjoy my life and share my life with my family. And that's when I realized that, I was pursuing and had a desire again to become a head coach. And the opportunity presented itself at St. Stephen's, where my wife works and where my daughter is a freshman. So I'm a blessed man. Actually, you know what? I'm a crazy blessed man. So
You mentioned being let go, and that's something that people typically don't talk about for a variety of reasons, and often because it's a painful experience. It's one that we don't want to go through.
yeah,
Yet coaches are often taught this is going to happen. It is part of your career.
yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about the emotional
Oh man,
stress,
yeah.
that job uncertainty? Are we going to lose our jobs? What
Yeah.
is going to be my next job? Where am I going to be? Talk a little bit about what that's like.
Yeah, those are all questions that you ask yourself, Tim. And I say that because yes, you do get into this. This is one of the professions that you get in, knowing to the fact that there will come a day when you can be fired for not performing, or your staff can be let go because your head coach is not performing, or he might have done something out of character, and got himself in trouble, and then you as an assistant coach, your life is impacted. Well, that's happened to me at Pittsburgh. We lost. We were there 2 years under Coach Stallings, and he walked in and got $10 million and asked not to coach anymore. And I walked home and told Beth and Riley that we had to move. And that was a very, very hard time for me, Tim, because that was the very first time in my life that I had ever been let go, fired, or resigned, whatever term people want to use these days. And it was totally out of my control. I mean, absolutely 100% out of my control. And I quickly realized then I no longer wanted that. I no longer wanted to have my life and my family's livelihood to be attached to someone, and it could be affected in a split second. Because I made a tactical mistake, and I can say it now. I left Georgetown University, in the city that I grew up in, and in the university I watched and learned under a great man, John Thompson, big coach, and then also JT3. I chased money to Pittsburgh, which was a terrible mistake for me. I got $100,000 raise. Well, most people would say that's a great thing. Well, guess what? I also got fired 2 years later, and it almost derailed my career, Tim. To be honest with you, I didn't know at that point, and it was a dark period in my life, that I didn't know if I was going to be able to resurrect my career, because now you're attached with a team that doesn't win. You're attached. You got the stigma of being fired. Even though people get fired all the time, but when you get fired, your ego is bruised and your ego is damaged, and you have to go through all of those emotional things, and put food on the table, and provide for your family, and your daughter is coming home from a great day at school and finding out that she's going to be, we got to go to another place. That's hard. That's hard. That's a hard thing to deal with. That's just people. That's the things that people don't see. They see the games on TV, but what they don't see is, when people, coaches or decisions are made, the assistant coaches, their families get impacted equally as bad, but yet they don't get a buyout. And then also I've been on the side where we've been let go at Florida Gulf Coast after winning 22 games, going to postseason play. So now, can you imagine being let go because you didn't perform, and now you're getting let go because you performed well, and both situations were out of my control. So I said right then and there that I'm going to take control of my life, and I'm going to take control of my next direction. And so I strategically and purposely, chose to go from Pittsburgh to Rhode Island. And I'll tell you, I sat in a chair one day, Tim, for easily 15 hours. My wife had gone and taken my daughter down to Florida. I sat in a chair from 6 o'clock in the morning till well into night. And my dog didn't eat. I didn't move. And I sat there and I just prayed and cried and prayed and cried, because I wanted to get this right. And I knew I had to get this right the next move. So the only phone call I took that day was from my wife, and she would let me know where she was on her travels down to Florida. And I didn't take any other phone calls. And then that night when she landed in Florida, I said, hey, listen, what are the 3 criteria we're looking for in this next move? And so she said, I want to go to a place where there's quality of living. She said, I want to be in a place where we have a chance to win, since winning seems to be the criteria that people measure you by. And then she said, you didn't know Coach Stallings before, even though he had recruited one of your players, you didn't know him. So let's get on a staff where you know the guy really well. And that was Rhode Island. David Cox had just gotten a job. Danny Hurley had just taken Connecticut. I knew David Cox for a long, long time from Washington, D.C., so it was a great move for me to join him. Rhode Island had just won. That's how Danny got the Connecticut job, and that's how David got the West Name job. And so it was easy, and then the quality of living, in Rhode Island was fantastic. We lived in Jamestown. So we met the 3 criterion, we met the 3 criterion. And so with that, we took the job at Rhode Island. So to answer your question, there's a lot of factors that go into it. And people don't understand all of the factors and how much your family is impacted. Usually if you're an assistant coach, by the behaviors or the wins and losses of another team.
When you consider these decisions, clearly not a simple one, you talked about, I've got to make a decision here, and I'm going to do it by choosing somebody I know rather than I don't know. I think there's definitely risks by getting hired with somebody you don't know well. At the same time, if we only get hired by people we know, there's a limitation to maybe what is possible. And I see this a lot in sports teams where the media, here are the 6 people most likely to get this job. And guess what? 5 out of the 6 probably have some tie to that institution or college or school, etc. Talk about your experiences in that. Do you think, as you're director of basketball now, you hire and fire people, how important do you think it is that the person you're hiring has a tie or connection to others either in the school or college or others in the coaching staff? Because I think this is a tricky one, because if somebody doesn't hire me because they don't know me, I am really limited as to how many jobs I can be hired to, even though I might be the best person for the job. But you didn't even consider me because you didn't know me.
Yep.
Conversely, as you alluded, somebody may hire me and they don't know me, and then, oh my gosh, what a mistake that was. This Tim was not the right fit. Talk a little bit about how you do that with hiring and firing and your opinions.
Well, for me, it's always about alignment. Regardless, I'm going to pick the best candidate. Sometimes it works out when you hire somebody that I've been in situations where I have done that and it's backfired, and I've been burned by it. Okay. And I've also hired people that I didn't know, and that has, backfired as well. So now it is all about alignment, and for what I look for is I lay it out really, really clearly, just like when recruiting, student athletes to come play for me, I want, these 5 things, Tim. I want people who have high character. Okay, they have to have high character, because I know I can make people better basketball players, but I'm not sure I can make them better people. And the same thing in the coaching ranks. I can show them and teach them and have them on my staff and have them bring value, but more importantly, add to their value if they're a good person. And so that's number one. Number two, they have to be passionate about the game of basketball. Number three, they have to be a teacher, not look at themselves just as a coach. So they have to look at themselves as an educator, as a mentor, as a leader, and willing to take on all those things. Excuse me one second. Leia, stop.
Yeah.
Come here. Stop. She sees a squirrel outside. I apologize. And then they have to value education. Because we'll be working in educational institutions, so they have to value education. They have to celebrate diversity, and then lastly, they have to be willing to have a tremendous work ethic and go the extra mile, because there's in sports, in a leadership position, there's only a beginning time. There's never really an ending time. So those are the things that I look for, and then I do my due diligence and check their references, and I always try to put them in a situation where, I do these little tasks, and then and I'll communicate with them, and then I'll stop communicating with them for a couple of days to see how persistent they are, and then I'll ask for their work, show me an example of this. Okay, take this film, and show me 6 ways that we could have defended that better. Okay, or how would you defend that better? Here's a situation: you got a 2-sport athlete, and we have a game on this particular day, and he wants to go to play lacrosse versus play basketball that day. How would we handle that? How would you handle that? How did you handle a parent that is a parent, and regardless of what their title is, they might be a pastor, they might be a 4-star general, but how can you look beyond their title and deal with the situation? And how would you deal with the situation? And I would ask for writing samples. So I have a lack of a better term, a system that I use, but alignment is the most important thing.
It sounds like those questions are almost all non-basketball coaching questions.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something we teach in our program, but also when you go to clinics, et cetera, and you and I were at a clinic together a couple of weeks ago, it all comes back to how do you work with people, and that often is the determination of whether you're an effective coach, not the X's and O's on the court.
Yeah, because Tim, what do you and I both know? Whatever sport you teach, that's what you're really good at, or you wouldn't be, a candidate for a position. Okay, but that's just a very, very small part of what you do. When you're building a program or running an effective program, and you and I both know there's a difference between a team and a program. But when you're building a program, you're doing everything else that it takes to build that program. And the 2 hours that you coach, actually on the field or on the pitch or on the court. I mean, my God, that's like a safe haven. I tell my kids all the time, it's like I do all this stuff from 8 to 3. So I can get there at 3:00, and I tell all those people that the other jobs that I have to do, I don't bother me from 3 to 5. You guys had me from 8 to 3, okay, but from 3 to 5, I don't want to hear about an admissions issue or none of that type of stuff, because 3 to 5, that's my time, that's my time, and because I'm a coach and I'm an educator and I'm a leader, but and I think you and I both know our craft is what we would love to do. And so we're going to do everything that we can do to have the opportunity to do it.
You're the director of basketball at a school, which may not exist in other school programs. Can you tell us a little bit about what your roles and responsibilities are for somebody who may be interested in pursuing your path?
Yeah, I mean, I wear many hats at St. Stephen's, and oftentimes, in the high school level, you will wear many hats. So I work in the admissions department. After I finish doing this podcast, I'm going to go to several middle schools and talk to them about one of our upcoming events. So I work also in the college placement, office, especially with our recruitable athletes, to talk to them about the recruiting game and how much has changed and how to, brand yourself and market yourself and put yourself in a position to be recruited. Okay. And then also work very, very closely with our head of schools, Mr. Peter Kraft, on anything that he needs for me to do, go out into the community to raise money, okay, to sitting in the upper school commons during lunchtime to make sure everybody is doing their, behaving properly. And then I'll walk around and talk to the teachers as well. And I serve on several different committees at the school. But my primary, passion job is, director of basketball. So I'm building a basketball program at St. Stephen's, and we have 6 teams. We have 2 middle school boys teams. We have a girls team. Okay, we have a JV team, and then we also have a varsity team. And so we're going to continue to. We have in that we have over 60 kids that are participating. So that's a great number. And the future of St. Stephen's basketball is very, very bright. And so we want to transition and develop a full girls, middle school team and a JV team and a varsity, eventually a varsity team. And then we also want to split up the middle school, 2 middle school boys teams and develop a freshman team. And then we're adding in yoga, we're adding in mental performance, we're adding in, leadership and coaching development. So all of that, it will be under my umbrella as we continue to move forward, from year 1 to year 2 to year 3 to year 4. So yes, my job as director of basketball is not just to concern myself or just coach the varsity team, is to bring a holistic approach to the entire basketball program.
How do you support the coaches in your program? You talked about professional development, leadership in the teams.
Mhm.
What about coaches? How do you help develop them?
Yeah, I take a great deal of interest in coaching development. I did that at IMG Academy, and I've done it all throughout my career. So I set up different opportunities like mock interviews. I share my knowledge of how to organically network and connect with other people. I allow coaches into my Rolodex, if you will, and set them up in opportunities. I share a great deal. Podcasts, motivational, things that I see or style of play and all of those different types of things. And we'll have discussions. But most importantly, I hope that they see in me and will come and ask me questions, how I've successfully navigated my career. That's a big topic, how to navigate a career, and the first question I ask them, Tim, is how important is longevity? And that seems to be the stumper, because they're looking for the secret sauce. And I keep telling them that is the secret sauce, and here's the reason why. If longevity is important to an individual, then they'll take their incremental steps, okay, that it takes to get up that proverbial ladder. But if longevity is not important to them, then they'll cut every corner and turn a square into a circle, and they want to skip steps. Okay. But then once they get to the top, and they'll eventually all get to the top, we all do, but we won't know how we got there. And we sure as heck won't know how to stay there. And you and your listeners all know that winning is one thing, but sustainable winning is the most important thing. So all of that is through coaching development. I try to model the behavior. Okay. I try to share my notebooks. I try to share I will recommend books for them to read. I would challenge them to come up with their MVP statements, which is mission, vision, and promise. And then I'll try to pick holes in it to see if this is truly what they value and this is truly what their mission is. And then I invite guest speakers in, to talk to our staff. And then, like I said, I try to set up opportunities where a coach that is an inspiring coach in our program would want to get to know coaches that I know, like a Stan Jones, who's a former assistant coach at Florida State, and then I'll set up a time where Stan and one of my coaches can connect. Or I've done it with Tommy Amaker at head coach at Harvard. I've done it with Orlando Vandross, former assistant at Virginia, and it just goes on and on. So coaching education is really important to me.
What are some of the challenges that you're seeing in coaching in today's environment? Because you've been coaching for decades. We've seen the expression is all things change, but everything stays the same.
A good expression.
At the same instance, things do change, especially in coaching. What have you seen that's changed in coaching that coaches just need to be aware of, to be thoughtful about, to prepare for?
Yeah, what I've seen, and the reason why I pivoted out of college athletics after we went to the Elite Eight at Kansas State and took a job as the technical director of basketball at IMG, is I saw the business side of sport, and basketball in particular, becoming far more transactional. And I knew that for myself, I'm a transformational coach, and I like impacting lives and do what I call creating living trophies. So my biggest challenge to young coaches or coaches that are coming up in this profession is to develop their emotional intelligence, to become more self-aware of what their negotiables are, what their non-negotiables are. And I think if they spend time with themselves and they can define those questions: what is my mission statement? What is my vision statement? What does my promise statement look like? um, what's my why? If they spend all the time and start to understand who they are, then they can pursue the career that they would actually like to have. So, the business side of basketball excuse me, the business side of sport is, continue to turn into a, multi-billion billionaire business, and so it's really, you know, uh, different. And again, the sport has changed a lot, and you got to continue to evolve, or you'll get left behind. But I would say my challenge is just to say to the listeners and the viewers is to spend time with yourself and become more emotionally, aware of who you are and self-aware, emotionally intelligence, and get in tune with that. Then I think that they'll land right where they're supposed to be.
I want to be thoughtful of your time. When you think about your career, other than the emotional intelligence piece, what advice would you have for coaches who may be starting out in their career, maybe looking at, should I even be a coach long term? Is this worth it? Thinking about all the travel, the changing jobs, the being fired, etc. What maybe two or three recommendations would you have for them that you would like to pass on to maybe the next generation?
I'd like to pass on to the next generation of, of coaches, leaders, educators, and mentors, is that we need you. We absolutely 100% need people that understand the value of sports and what it can do and how it can impact people's lives. So we need them. But they need to understand, how important that position is, and stop chasing the pretty penny, if you will. I would have challenged them to, again, yes, develop their emotional intelligence and understand who they are, and then they'll attract and they'll find that situation where they can have a great deal of impact, and then through that impact, they will be rewarded, and they will be financially rewarded, and then more importantly, they'll be, emotionally and socially, rewarded as well. This game of basketball, for me, Tim, has taken me around the world. It's provided for me. It's never let me down. And I just say, love the game, and it'll love you back. And the last thing that I would say to your listeners or a young coach is that, love the game, because that's the reason why you started playing in the beginning. But understand that it is a business. They have to continue to educate themselves. They have to continue to evolve as human beings. Okay. They have to continue to encourage. Okay. And they have to continue to inspire.
Great thoughts. If somebody wants to reach out to you, maybe has a question or just wants to connect,
Yeah.
networking, which I always recommend,
Yeah.
email okay?
Yeah. Email is fine. Kevin Sutton basketball at gmail.com, as you have on the screen. That is the easiest way. And Tim, you and I both know we were recently at USA Basketball in Atlanta, and which a great privilege that we both had, because it was a tremendous uh,
Really?
speakers. But and I challenge your listeners, with this. 1/3 of you are going to, try to reach out and touch base with me, and you're not going to get me, for some odd reason, and you're going to stop. And then 1/3 of you are going to say, no, he's never going to respond, and you're going to stop. But it's that 1/3 that has persistence, and that reaches out and it stays persistent till they connect with me. That's the person that's going to be, wildly successful. And that's just not just meeting Kevin Sutton or meeting the Tim Baggers. That's a life lesson. Stay persistent. Stay persistent, and you'll be surprised what persistence can do for you. So persist till you succeed.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I'm often surprised and then not surprised at how few people do reach out when, even in this podcast, we provide contact detail of so many great leaders in sports that could provide who knows what opportunity. We've had one of our students end up with an internship in the NFL because he reached out to one of our podcast guests who responded. You just never know. And so for those of you listening or watching, I really do recommend you reach out to Kevin, especially if you're in basketball. He's a wealth of information. He has a wealth of contacts. It's definitely worth your time and energy. Well, that's a wrap for us. Just a reminder, we try to do these every few weeks. Thank you, Kevin, for joining us. We'll be back in a couple. Be sure to like, subscribe, etc., follow wherever you're watching from. We'll see you next time.
Thanks so much, Tim.